In the village of Uzu, there lived a beautiful woman named Ebere. Ebere was one of the prettiest maidens in her village, and she prided herself on her beauty. She had long dark hair, eyes as beautiful as the sun, and her smile alone could light up their small village. Ebere lived with her parents, Mr. Eze and Mrs. Chi. Mr. Eze and Mrs. Chi were merchants who sold all kinds of goods ranging from foodstuffs, fabrics, shoes, fashion beads to jewelry, and so much more. Mr. Eze and Mrs. Chi were considered one of the richest merchants in the village of Azu. Their wealth brought them respect from other villagers, and this respect was extended to their only child and daughter, Ebere. Before Ebere was born, Mr. Eze and Mrs. Chi had waited for 13 years after their marriage before they bore Ebere, giving them enough time to gather their wealth from their different businesses. As a result of this, Ebere lacked nothing growing up. All her needs were provided and met on time. And because she was an only child, her parents pampered her like an egg. Whenever Ebere was not at school or during the holiday, Ebere would help her parents to sell their goods at their shops. It was in the process of helping her parents to sell their goods at their shop that Ebere learned the nitty-gritty of buying and selling. She was a smart seller and often gained the favor of their customers. Aside from being a beautiful woman, Ebere grew up to be a very kind-hearted woman. Despite coming from a rich home and knowing she was the heir to all her parents' wealth, Ebere was humble and kind. She respected her elders, showed compassion to the poor, treated her peers with respect, and above all, Ebere loved to give. If anyone were to go to Ebere to ask for help, Ebere would help the person even if it were with her last money. She never said no to anyone who came to her for help. Ebere believed that the gods had blessed her parents with so much wealth, so she could bless other people by extension. Everything about Ebere's life was going on smoothly, except one aspect of her life. Ebere found it difficult to find true friends and to find a lover who genuinely loved her. When Ebere was a teenager, she noticed that a great portion of her friends did not love her as much as she loved them. They only pretended to love Ebere because of the benefits they could get from her, and this really broke Ebere's heart. Concerning finding a lover, Ebere also found it difficult to find a man who genuinely loved her. Most men who came to ask for her hand in marriage only did so because they heard and knew that Ebere's parents were one of the richest merchants in their village, therefore making Ebere a wealthy heir. Being a wealthy heir was a good thing, but for Ebere, it was a big disadvantage. For years, she watched her friends and even younger maidens in the village get married to men who loved them and treated them like queens. Each time Ebere saw this, it made her sad. She had everything, but nothing could satisfy the yearning she had for a man, a husband whom she could call her own. Ebere's parents, Mr. Eze and Mrs. Chi, knew their daughter was due to be in her husband's house, but they never pressured her to get married. Instead of telling her that she was getting too old to still be in her father's house, Ebere's parents tried their best to advise their daughter. They always advised Ebere to not allow peer pressure to push her into making a mistake she would regret forever, and they told her not to worry, that the gods would send her a husband when the time was right. Ebere continued to listen to her parents until she turned 28 years old. By this time, her friends and peers who had married years earlier had given birth to 3 children, and some gave birth to more children. As if turning 28 with no man or lover was not enough torture for Ebere, her friends and peers began to mock Ebere and call her names. There were even rumors spreading in the village that Ebere was married to a spiritual husband. That's why she could not get married to a man in real life, despite her wealth and beauty. Some of the villagers also spread lies that Ebere was waiting for an already made husband, someone from a rich background who could match her social and financial status. But that was not true. Ebere never looked down on any man and was open to marrying even from a poor background. All she needed was for the man to genuinely love her and treat her like his queen. Unfortunately, another year passed and Ebere was still without a lover. Precisely 2 months after Ebere's 29th birthday, Ebere was in one of her parents' shops when a man who looked like he was in his mid-20s came to buy a lot of foodstuff. His name was Emeka, and he had just moved into their village. It was also the first time Ebere had seen him at their shop. While attending to Emeka, the two of them chatted casually, and from their conversation, Ebere learned that Emeka's master had sent Emeka to buy all those foodstuffs. As time passed, Emeka became a frequent customer to Ebere's parents' shop, and each time he went there, Ebere would be eager to sell for him. In the process of always going to Ebere's parents' shop, Emeka and Ebere became very good friends, and they ultimately fell in love. Since their relationship started on the grounds of friendship, what Ebere felt for Emeka was different from what she felt for the other men who she had dated in the past. She believed that Emeka loved her genuinely and he wasn't like the other men in their village. Emeka, on the other hand, had also fallen in love with Ebere. It was his first time being with a woman who did not only treat him like he was the only man in the world, but was kind to him. The only thing was, since Ebere was older than him, Emeka did not know how to ask her out or confess his feelings to her. About 6 months after Ebere and Emeka became very close friends, Ebere decided to take the bold step. She asked Emeka to be her husband, and Emeka said yes. Ebere was already very desperate to be married, so she made that step out of desperation. When Ebere told her parents what she had done, her parents kicked against the idea of her wanting to marry Emeka without even knowing him properly. They advised Ebere that if she truly loved Emeka as she claimed, then she should at least spend more time getting to know him better. But Ebere refused to listen to her parents. She was tired of the mockery from her friends and the villagers, and she wanted to be married before 30 at all costs. A month after Ebere told her parents about her intentions to marry Emeka, the two lovers had their wedding. Ebere made sure that her wedding was big and colorful. She invited the entire village to share in her joy, and there was enough food and drinks to go around. Ebere just wanted the villagers to see that she had finally gotten married to a man so their mockery could stop. Precisely 2 weeks after their wedding, Emeka began to tell Ebere how much he had always wanted to open his own foodstuff shop but never had enough money to fund his dreams. He also added that he didn't like how the villagers looked at him whenever he walked in the village, thereby insinuating that the villagers looked at him like he was a nobody. So he really needed something to do. When Ebere heard that, she understood what her husband was trying to say, and without even arguing, she gave him a large amount of money to start his foodstuffs business. Ebere expected that, with the money she gave him, her husband would open a decent-sized foodstuff business, and from their profit, they would grow the business into a big one. 2 days after Ebere gave all that money to Emeka, Emeka traveled to purchase the items he needed for his shop, and he went away for 1 whole week. A week later, Emeka came home empty-handed, and he claimed he had been robbed on his way to purchase the items for his shop. Out of love, Ebere thanked the gods that Emeka had not been injured or killed, and she even promised to give him another money to start this business. Unfortunately, when Ebere gave Emeka another huge amount of money to start his business, Emeka traveled again for weeks, but this time he claimed that his mother had fallen terribly sick, so he had to divert the money to take care of her. Blinded by love, Ebere could not see that her husband, whom she married out of desperation, was clearly using her. Even her parents tried to tell her to stop giving so much money to Emeka, who didn't seem like he wanted to open a business, but Ebere refused to listen. After a whole year of Emeka consistently lying to Ebere to get money, Ebere decided to take matters into her own hands. She decided to open a big shop for Emeka. She invested almost all of her life savings into that business because she believed she and Emeka would grow the business, just like her father and mother had grown theirs. Already by this time, Emeka had turned into a totally different person. He no longer respected Ebere like he used to, and he would treat her like garbage. Sometimes, Emeka would go to Ebere's safe and steal some money from it. There was even a time he took her gold, her expensive beads, and other jewelry, and he sold all of them, and when Ebere asked him about it, he beat her up badly. Despite everything, Ebere still loved Emeka, and she did her best to cover up everything she was passing through in his hands. If she sustained any injuries whenever Emeka hit her, she would lie to her parents that she slipped and fell, so her parents would not know Emeka was physically abusing her. As for the business Ebere opened for her and her husband, in less than 3 months of opening that business, Emeka ran everything to the ground. He would give some people foodstuffs on credit, and sometimes he wouldn't even bother to ask his friends to pay. He carried on like that for 3 months until their shop that was once filled with foodstuffs became empty. When Ebere saw this, she was so frustrated and she didn't know what to do. Slowly, she and Emeka began to fight almost every day, and each time they fought, Ebere would end up badly beaten up by Emeka. As if all Emeka had done to her was not enough, rumors began to spread in the village that Emeka had been sleeping around with other women. At first, when Ebere heard the rumors, she refused to believe it, and swore that Emeka could never do such a thing to her. But when she remembered how badly Emeka had treated her in the past months, Ebere connected the dots and she realized that the rumors could be true. Out of anger, Ebere confronted Emeka about the rumors she had heard in the village, but Emeka called her names and beat her up as usual. Then he left the house and did not return for a week. After waiting days for her husband to return, Ebere got so angry that anger pushed her to do something she never thought she would do. To confirm if the rumors were true, she went to a powerful dibia in their village and told him to make a charm that would disgrace Emeka in his terrible act. The dibia understood what Ebere needed, and with the help of Emeka's clothes, which Ebere had carried along with her, the dibia made a very powerful charm. 2 days after Ebere visited the dibia's shrine, she was at her parents' shop when she heard the villagers screaming, "Abomination! Abomination!" in the village. Around the same time Ebere heard the villagers screaming in a loud voice, someone ran to Ebere and told her to come and see something. Initially, Ebere was confused and she refused to follow the person, but when the villager mentioned Emeka's name, she instantly knew what it was about and she followed the villager. As soon as Ebere got to the location Emeka was, she saw other villagers gathering around the hut and she could hear a woman's voice from the hut saying, "Someone, please help us." Without wasting any time, Ebere walked inside the hut and she saw her husband and one of her friends stuck together in an intimate position. When Emeka saw Ebere, he tried to hide his face, but it was already too late. Ebere had already seen all she needed to see. Without saying a word to any of them, Ebere walked out of the room with tears rolling down her cheeks and her head covered in shame. Later that evening, Ebere went back to the dibia to undo the charm because she had seen what she needed to see, and the dibia undid the charm. Immediately the charm was undone, Emeka rushed home to beg Ebere, but he met his things outside their hut. Ebere had thrown out all of Emeka's stuff and she left to her parents' house. For days, Emeka tried to beg Ebere, promising that he would change and would not take her love for granted anymore. But Ebere refused to take him back. He had hurt her badly and she could not forgive him. From that day, Ebere learned her lesson and she vowed never to do anything out of desperation again. After Emeka and Ebere went their separate ways, Ebere focused more on the other important things of life and she lived a happy life until she eventually met the man who loved her genuinely like she had always yearned for.